Hello everyone, Hopefully No K Editor 357 here, and for today's Don't Stop December video, I am once again doing a video where I talk about 5 great free visual novels you should try out. For some of them, I will just be reading their official plot synopsis, because that will certainly be better than me awkwardly trying to explain the story in my own words. And then after each plot summary, I'll briefly talk about what I liked about this visual novel and why I think you should give it a read. The plot summaries and my thoughts on each visual novel will be completely spoiler-free, so no need to worry about getting important story events spoiled in this video. Also, just an apology in advance if I butcher any of the names to the characters or visual novels in general. All that being said, let's begin. Up first is Carpe Diem, which is an extremely short but memorable kinetic visual novel, and here's the official synopsis taken from its Steam page. What makes someone perfect? Experience this short, bittersweet story in the shoes of the main character Yun, where you will spend your time hanging out with a girl named Ai. Ai is everything Yun wishes for in a woman, except for one very important thing, a thing he prefers to disregard in order for them to have the best time of their lives. You have a day to enjoy your date and see the world from Yun's point of view. This visual novel only took me 15 or 20 minutes to complete, but its story is very interesting. It really hinges on this one plot twist regarding the one very important thing mentioned earlier. The plot twist itself, I was able to predict, and maybe so will you, but it was still very well done. Despite the short length of the visual novel, the story structure is really solid and serves the purpose of making the plot twist as impactful as possible. And then the story ends, leaving you alone with your thoughts as you reflect on the story with your newfound understanding of it. It has a lot to say in its short runtime, and the way it goes about saying it through the character interactions and overall story was great. The art is nothing groundbreaking, but serves the short visual novel well. And if I'm being honest, I genuinely can't remember anything about the soundtrack. And if you play this and enjoyed it, there is a direct sequel that expands on the characters of Yun and Ai, alongside with introducing readers to a new cast of characters in an exciting, emotional, and genuinely unpredictable at times story. The sequel does cost $5. Despite still being on the short side, the official length of the visual novel is listed as 2 hours, but it personally took me a little under 5 hours to finish reading it in its entirety. But if you want to see the continued story of these characters in a slightly longer new story, I would recommend giving Carpe Diem Reboot a shot. I really like the true ending. It's not at all how I expected the story to go, but it made sense. And I think there's still a lot more story to tell with these characters, and I would love to see a third entry in the Carpe Diem series. We can call it Carpe Diem Rebooted. Again. Can you tell I majored in video game titling in college? Next is Voices from the Sea, another relatively short visual novel that left a big impact on me. I actually have a full video review of this visual novel, so I won't be spending too long talking about this one. I'll leave a link to my spoiler-free review of it in the description if you want a more detailed review of it. But here's the plot summary of Voices from the Sea taken directly from my review of it. Voices from the Sea revolves around our main character, Cantus, whose personality is just as prickly as his name sounds. Get it? 'Cause it's similar to cactus? Okay, never mind. Cantus is very tired of everyday life. He has no friends, seeing any and everyone in his life as an annoyance, or as he refers to them, noise. And he doesn't like noise. Clearly, he hasn't listened to Noise by Nightwish, or he'd feel much different. Cantus finds himself spending most of his time alone at the sea, listening to the calming sound of the waves. That is, until a noisy and bubbly girl by the name of Mara shows up and starts talking to him. After realizing he's a grouchy grouch, she makes it her personal mission to get him to smile over the course of 7 days. And considering the visual novel clocks in at about an hour and a half, that's really all I can say for the plot. Cantus is going to go to the beach 7 times, and each time Maris will be there waiting for him and trying to get him to smile. This visual novel took me around an hour and a half to complete, but its story still sticks with me to this day. It is a very simple but important message that I don't see touched upon often in visual novels. I won't say what because of spoilers. It also has fun interactions between the two main characters, Cantus and Maris, decent art minus a couple awkward character sprites, and a fitting soundtrack, along with some great sound design that fully immerses you in the world of Voices from the Sea. It's one of those stories I think everyone could learn a bit from, and it doesn't take too long to tell its message. There is also a plus version with additional story content, voice acting, and a couple other bonus features for $5. That may seem overpriced considering it's still only about a 90-minute visual novel, so I recommend giving the original version a playthrough. The story is more than great on its own, and then if you enjoy it, purchasing the Plus version so you can get access to the stuff I mentioned, and know you're supporting an author to a story you really liked. The extra story content is hit or miss, but when it's good, I really liked it. The voice acting, to be blunt, is not good, and the other bonus features are neat extras. For $5, and again, knowing you're supporting the creator of this short gem, I'd say it's more than worth it. But the original Voices from the Sea without any of the extra content is amazing on its own, and easily another great free visual novel that deserves to be read. Up next is Doki Doki Literature Club, a visual novel I'm sure you've heard of before this point. The main character of Doki Doki Literature Club is invited by his best friend Sayori to join their high school's literature club, to which he reluctantly agrees. There he meets the other 3 members, and each character is more or less a popular anime trope personified, and you spend your time writing poems and sharing them with the club, and depending on the poems you write and choices you make, you decide to get closer to some of the club members. Leaving it at this wouldn't do DDLC's plot justice, however I don't want to spoil the surprise for anyone if by some miracle you don't know the true nature of this game. Safe to say, everything is not as it seems, and what transpires is a meta-story with some of the scariest moments in gaming I have ever experienced, and amazingly well-written characters and interactions that flip the anime tropes those characters represent on their heads, to make one of the most unique visual novel stories I've ever read. DDLC is a love letter to visual novels as a whole, fully utilizing this niche genre of storytelling to craft one of the most chilling and well-written psychological horror stories I have ever seen. And it really is a story only possible in the medium of a visual novel. Despite being equal parts love letter and deconstruction of visual novels as a whole, it's still a fantastic starting point for anyone new to visual novels, since you get to see just how creative the stories within this genre can be. There's also been a recently released Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, with added story content, new music, and new and updated artwork. I haven't gotten around to playing through my copy of it yet, but I have heard overall good things, so there is that version available for $15 as well if you want the newest and most complete version of Doki Doki Literature Club. Still though, the original version of DDLC is a complete story and overall amazing experience on its own, even if you're not a fan of visual novels. You can get it for free on Steam and itch.io, and I would say that Doki Doki Literature Club is a free visual novel that is worth experiencing, even if you go into it knowing it's not just a cutesy dating sim game like it appears to be at first. And it's at this point while making the script that I realized that I actually don't have any more free visual novels that I have played and can recommend. However, 3 is a weird number. I mean, it comes to become 4. How can you trust that number? So I've done research online and have gathered 2 more visual novels for free that, from everything that I've read about them, are worth checking out. This is also serving as a moment of realization for me that maybe I'm spending too much money on visual novels. Nah, that's impossible. On to the next visual novel. Next up, we have a roughly 1 to 2 hour long kinetic visual novel called Jupiter's Knot. I am taking the short plot synopsis from a review of the visual novel on Fuwa Novel, which I will leave a link to in the description. This VN tells the tale of 2 characters who have no name, of a boy and a demon. The boy, who became lost in travels, stumbles upon the demon in the old, abandoned ruins of the town. He's at first wary of the demon, or fiend as he calls her, due to the stories he has heard of fiends tricking people and eating their souls. The demon beckons the boy closer, telling him that she is confined by magic to a small portion of the area and asks him to tell her a story. He reluctantly obliges, telling her the story of a cobbler who came upon a yellow-eyed fiend and became trapped by the fiend, having his soul eaten. His stomach growling, the boy makes a deal with the demon to stay with her for the day, in exchange for her helping him with food. Thus, our characters' lives become entwined with one another. So I really do love small-scale but character-driven stories like this, and it seems that the writing for both characters and their interactions are really well done. This visual novel also switches perspectives between the boy and the demon, which I think is a fantastic way to learn more about the characters without having everything about them explicitly told to readers through dialogue. The art looks absolutely amazing. It all looks very detailed, and the style of the art really gives off this vibe that I think works well for a small-scale story of a boy and a demon just interacting with one another. The sound design is supposedly really great, and further engrosses you in the setting, which I think for short character-driven stories like this one is very important. And the soundtrack is varied and emotionally engrosses you in the story Jupiter's Knot has to offer. In short, Jupiter's Knot just seems to be a ridiculously high-quality visual novel that tells a short but engaging story, offers excellent visuals and amazing sound design and soundtrack for a fully immersive experience. I love these types of stories where the crux of it is 2 characters interacting and learning more about one another. So I would say that Jupiter's Knot is a great free visual novel to check out, and one I will probably be taking a look at in the future myself. And for my last recommendation for good free visual novels is Kodawa Shoujo, a visual novel that was probably a lot of people's introduction to the genre. Here's the plot synopsis taken from the Visual Novel Database. Nakai Hisao is a normal high school student, currently in his final year of high school. One day, Hisao finds an anonymous letter in his math textbook, directing him to meet the sender at a given location. The sender turns out to be his crush, however, as she confesses to him, he suddenly collapses. He awakes in a hospital bed and is told by the doctors that the reason he collapsed is due to arrhythmia, a rare heart condition that causes his heartbeat to sometimes become irregular. Due to this, his parents have enrolled him in Yamaku, a school for physically disabled students. I'm paraphrasing from here, but from this point, Nakai spends his time at his new school and meets the main heroines. And depending on your choices, Nakai gets closer to one of the heroines and goes down their character route. And I'm assuming each of these routes entails entering a romantic relationship with whichever heroine you chose. A lot of people already know about this one, so I feel like I don't have to spend too long talking about it, but here's what I have gathered from researching it online. Also, I do actually have Kodawa Shoujo downloaded and plan to play it in the future. Whether or not I do a full-on review of it remains to be seen, since so many people have already gone over this visual novel, and I'm not sure if I could offer anything new to say about it. But that's a future me decision anyways. Overall, I heard it is a fantastic visual novel and a great starting point for beginners. It handles the topics of physical disabilities and how it affects the characters in a very mature way. I hear each of the character roots, while varying in quality because if I'm not mistaken each root is written by a different author, are all really solid, and even the ones that aren't as well written compared to others have interesting and good story ideas and themes present throughout them. The artwork for the time it was made is pretty solid. It kind of reminds me of True Remembrance, but maybe that's just because they're both older visual novels, and I hear the soundtrack is pretty great. There are hentai scenes, but you have the option to turn them off. And someone who has played Kodawa Shoujo, please feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I hear aside from one character's root, they don't really play a major part in the story, so if you skip them, you're not really missing out on anything. I have heard different opinions that a couple of the roots and overall story have some problematic elements, but as someone who hasn't experienced the story for myself and knows nothing but the basic premise, I don't really feel like I have the right to comment on them. There are no shortage of articles about Kodawa Shoujo made by people who have actually experienced the story who can go into much greater detail than I can as of right now. So definitely do some research for yourself if you feel like I'm not offering up a solid explanation or analysis of the visual novel. But overall, Kodawa Shoujo is a surprisingly high-quality visual novel that handles its story and characters with maturity, in an overall well-written and pretty lengthy story with some dated but still serviceable artwork, and a great soundtrack. It serves as a great starting point for beginners to the visual novel genre, and is also just a great visual novel even for experienced visual novel players. And I think it really paved the way for future English developers of visual novels going forward. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Hopefully an OK Editor 357 here, and tell me down below in the comments what's your favorite free visual novel, or just visual novel in general. Also, please tell me what you thought of this list, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share, and if you would like to see more content from me, which is mostly visual novel reviews and anime-related content, please consider subscribing to my channel and checking out some of my other videos. Thank you to everyone for watching this video, and see you guys in the next one, which, since it's Don't Stop December, is tomorrow.